Yeah, so we are in Bava Metzia.
Oh, Metzia
Zion test.
and Zion tests.
Yeah.
One wolf is not an unavailable accident. One wolf is not an unavoidable accident. Two wolves is an unavoidable accident. But Yehuda says, at a time when wolves are sent out, even one wolf is an unavoidable accident. Two dogs is not an unavoidable accident. Yadu, the Babylonian, said in the name of Reb Meah, from one direction, it is not an unavoidable accident. From two directions, it is an unavoidable accident. Excuse me. A brigand is not an unavoidable accident. A lion, a bear, a leopard, or a bidellus or a snake is an unavoidable accident. When? When they came of themselves. But if he led them to a place frequented by bands of beasts or brigands, it is not an unavoidable accident. If it died naturally, or it is an unavoidable accident, and if he afflicted it and it died, it is not an unavoidable accident. If it ascended steep mountain ranges and fell, it is an unavoidable accident. If he took it up to steep mountaintops and it fell and died, it is not an unavoidable accident. An unpaid shomer may stipulate to be exempt from an oath, and a borrower to be exempt from paying, and a paid shomer and a renter to be exempt from an oath or from paying. If anyone stipulates contrary to biblical law, his stipulation is void. Any stipulation which is preceded by the action, his stipulation is void. Anything that is possible to fulfill at the end, and he stipulated concerning it in the beginning, his stipulation is valid.
Okay. So in terms of stipulations that are connected Torah, this is only referring to non-monetary things. Because monetary things that are stipulated by the Torah, a person can waive. He can waive his right to money, or they can make some sort of condition on it, and that's actually acceptable, right? So we brought this up in the context of the shomrim, because the Torah tells us what the liability is of shomrim. But we also said that let's say a shomer chinam can say, listen, I don't want to look after this unless you agree that even if something happens, I'll be pater from a shvur.
Right.
They can say, okay, that's fine, because the shvur really boils down to a monetary obligation. Because if he doesn't want to take a shvur, then he's going to have to pay for the object. So really, what we're just talking about is negotiating money. But what you can't negotiate in terms of Torah is something like if a man says Harayat Mekudeshly on condition that I'm not obligated in your marital pleasure. That's something that's just the condition will not even be binding, but the marriage will take effect, but the condition is going to disappear. So it's not like it voids the entire act. We just don't hear the on condition that, because the on condition that is a completely invalid thing.
Right. Right.
Okay. Perek Shmini. Hashoel is hapara. Now we move on to the borrower, and the borrower, we have said, is hired on anything, even an ones. Okay, with the one curious exception that if the Baalim is with him at the time, then he'll be pater from any sort of standard loss, like an ones or would an Aveda or a Geneva. I'm actually not sure. An Aveda or a Geneva might also even be pater. Can we just see that? Just suddenly thought of that question. So it's a Gezeres a Kasav. We've got a pasuk that says Ba'alav imo, the Ba'alav eini mo shalem yishalem. Im Ba'alav imo lo yishalem. Right? So we have a specific pasuk that says that if somebody borrows something and the owner is not with him, then he's going to have to pay for anything. But the implication is, of course, that if the owner is with him, then he doesn't have to pay.
He said if the owner is with him, he doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to pay. So here the Mishnah spells it out. Hashoel is a para. He borrows the cow. And at the same time, he borrowed the owner, so to speak. In other words, the owner said, "Listen, I'll come and work with you as well. You're my friend." I have two friends, and he says, "I've got a cow and I've got me. Come, we'll come and help you plow your field together." Or Sachar Baalia, or he hired him. Yeah, if the guy said, "You can borrow my cow, sure. Can you come and work with me?" He says, "Listen, my cow I don't care about, but me, you're gonna have to pay me my fee, my daily work rate to do that." Okay, so it's still the Baalim are coming to work with him. Shal it's a Baalim or Sefaran, or he did it in the other direction. He first hired the owner of the cow, or just got him to come and work with him for free. And they're working together, and the guy says, "Listen, I've got a cow, I can bring it in and it'll make our work easier." And he says, "Yeah, that'd be great, thank you." Okay, Vamesa, and now the cow dies. He's pater, right? The borrower of the cow is pater. Shenemar, im ba'alav imo lo yishalem. If the owner is with him, he doesn't have to pay. But Ava, shal es hapara v'achar kach shal es habalim. If he first borrowed the cow, and then only later the owner came to join him in the work, either by work, but either for free or for pay. The mesa, and then the cow dies. He's chayev sheneimar ba'alav eni mo shalem yishalem. If the owner was not with him at the beginning, so the svara for this is basically that if the cow comes simultaneously with the owner or after the owner, then he's already got a sort of powerless over the owner. So it doesn't make sense that now the owner brings in the cow, and now he's going to be higher for everything when he's already got the owner working with him. So he's got the dominion over the cow, over the owner. The owner's got the dominion over the cow, and then the cow's got the dominion over him. That kind of circle doesn't make sense. But if it happens first that the cow comes in and the cow, so he's already higher for the cow, and the owner comes later to join in the work, the chiyuv for the cow already took effect. So even if the owner is with him at the time that the cow dies now, because the cow was with him first, he actually still is chayav for the cow.
What happens if the person who he borrowed to help him died? I don't mean as a joke. I mean serious. What would happen? Would it be value?
He's not. He doesn't. The person is not an object. You can only be chayav for to pay back for something that's got a monetary value. The cow's got a monetary value. If one of your workers is working for you and he dies on the job, and it wasn't through any negligence or anything, what's he going to do? He's going to pay a fee to the widow. That's not. It's not how it's going to work.
We give value to slaves. We have to,
Yes, slaves are different. You're correct, but slaves are honestly, it's not so PC to say, but slaves have a monetary value. I suppose you do. When you talk about nadarim, you can make a neder of a person's value as keilu they're a slave, but you don't have an ownership over a person. You can have an ownership over a slave. You can't have ownership over a person, and you're not called the shomer of another adult human being. Even a child, you don't have ownership over. A slave you can have ownership over. An eved knani, that is only an eved knani.
I was thinking like we had this before before where if a bull gores a woman and she's pregnant and the fetus dies and all, then there's a
right. Very good, very good. You're asking good questions. The fetus, right? So there is a because the bull caused damages. Correct. There's the may vlados that he has to pay. But that's it's in the gather of nezek. So similarly, if a bull had gored a normal adult human and caused damage, then the owner of the bull has to pay the damages. If it's nezek, if he has to pay for the damage done to the person.
Right. Okay.
He doesn't pay boshes for the other person. I'm not sure about the tsar. He definitely pays nezek though, and ripoy. He should have to pay the ripoy because it's his money that caused the damage. But I think boshes was the particular one. Well, the five things. There's nezek, tsar, ripoy, boshes, and Sheves and his inability to work. So I think Ripoyo, at least Boshes is the one that stands alone, because Boshes embarrassment is something that has to be caused by a human deliberately. So we saw that if he's chayav for being mavayish somebody, but if his ox embarrassed somebody, then he's not chayav on the Boshes. But all the rest of the damages he is chayav on. Okay. But again, if his ox killed somebody, okay, so the ox is going to be stoned. But in terms of there's a kofir, there's a thing called kofir which he has to pay, which is but that's only if the bull was muad.
Right. Okay.
If a muad bull killed, then he has to pay a kofir. If not, then he doesn't have to pay the kofir either. All right. Mishnah base. By the way, I'm very encouraged that you're asking these questions, because that's because you've retained a lot of the Mishnahs who've just been learning about, and it's a good cross questioning that you're coming up with there, Shkoyach.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Yeah, no, it's great. That's great, because you wouldn't have been asking that if you hadn't learned all those Mishnayos before, where we've been talking about these things. So it's good to see that's informing your thought. Okay. Mishnah base. Hashoel es apara. Somebody borrows a cow. Sh'ala chatzi yom eschara chatzi yom. So what's the terms of the deal? Is that for half the day he's borrowing it, and for half the day he's paying a rental for it. Sh'ala hayom uschar lemachar. Or he borrowed it for today and he's renting it for tomorrow. Sachar achas v'shar achas. He borrowed one and he rented one. Excuse me. V'meisa. And now the cow died. One of the two, in the case of the two cows, one of the two cows died. Amashil omer. The lender says, She'ula mesa, b'yom shehaisa she'ula mesa, b'sha'a shehaisa she'ula mesa. So there are three different cases, and in each of the three different cases, we're bringing him with a different taina, saying that basically it was the borrowed cow that died, which means that you're chayav to pay me back for the cow. Because if it had been rented, then he would be pater from the the onus of the cow dying. Okay, but hello, Amir. Any idea? He says, honestly, I don't know. It might be that what you're saying is right. It might be that it's not. Chayav, right? We have a case of a bari b'shema. The mashil is claiming a bari. He's saying this is the rented cow that died, or it was during the time that it was rented that it died. And the other guy is saying maybe, maybe not. In which case, he gets to he says this is clear, and he has to pay, right? Right. So the commentary points out that the Gemara says that according to halacha, a Mishnah can't be explained exactly as it's written, because the halacha is that if somebody comes to his friend and says, "You've got 100 shekels of mine," and the other one says, "Do I? I don't know." Right? The answer is he's patur, even though it's a bari b'shema, because it's right. You can't just walk up to somebody and say, "You've got 100 shekels of mine," and then the guy says, "I don't know, maybe," and now he suddenly has to pay. That's not, because that's not the halacha. He would be pater unless he admits to it, or unless the other guy brings witnesses or evidence that this is his. The only time a bari b'shema works is if we already admit the case that there is a liability, and now whether he's paid back is in doubt. For example, they both admit that he says you never paid me back the loan. And the guy says, I know I borrowed from you, but I'm not sure if I paid you back. I think I paid you back, but I'm not 100% sure. So that's a bari v'shema where the bari wins. He said, no, you never paid me back, because we've already admitted that there is a debt, and now he's not sure if he's paid it back or not. So now you can't take it out. He can't say that he's paid it back just from the doubt. So we have to reinterpret the case in the Mishnah as being a case where he would have otherwise been claimed. So, for example, where there's already a case of a possible shavua between Reuven and Shimon. For example, Reuven is chayav to Shimon in a shvua. He borrowed. So let's take the case of Reuven received two cows for 1 day. Okay, um, for half of the day as he borrowed them, and for half of the day as a rental, or he received two cows for 2 days, one day for uh, as he borrowed it, and 1 day is as a rental, and both of the cows died. And Shimon says, okay, on the day that they were borrowed, they both died. And Reuven answers, you're right. One of the cows died during the time of the rental, but the other one, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it died during the rental period. So now what we've got is that Reuven is actually a mordeva mektzas. He's admitted to part of the debt. He says, I know I owe you for one cow. I'm not sure about the other one. So immediately he's already chayav a shvua to Reuven because mordeva mektzas is chayav in a shvua to be pater from the second half of whatever he owes. And now that we have this situation, the Bari Bashema is going to win over, and either he's going to take a shvua that the cow definitely was not the cow was a rental at the time that it died, which he can't do. He can't take a shvua because he's already said, I don't know. You can't take a shvua on something that you're not sure of. Okay, and once he can't take that shvua, the Bari is going to win, and he's going to have to pay for both cows. Okay, so we had to kind of rework this Mishnah to make a little bit more sense for the Bari B'Shema. Okay, however, in the other, let's take the Mishnah comes up with another case. Socher omer schura meisa b'yom shehaisa schura meisa b'shah shehaisa schura meisa. So he comes with a Bari claim. He says, no, this car died on my watch, but while it was rented. Okay, it's a rental car that died. And the other guy says, look, I don't know for sure. Okay, so then for sure he's pater, because the Bari is already in the case of a pater, and you can't prove that there was anything wrong, so therefore he doesn't have to pay. Now what happens is ze omer she'ula, ze omer sechura. So now they're both saying Bari. So the renter says it was rented at the time, and the owner says it was borrowed at the time. Yishava hasocher schura meisa. So now he has to take a shavua that the rental cow, that it was a rental cow that died. Okay. And the Gemara again explains that this is not because he's modeh in it, because that again, this has to be on a case of Gilgul Shvua, because if one person claims you owe me money, and the other one says I don't owe you money, there's no case for a Shvua here, because if one says you owe me and the other one denies it flat out, that's not a cause to make a person take a Shvua. The only way you can make a person have a shvua is if you already have an inyan of a shvua there. For example, again, the Moedim Mektas case that we had before, where there were two cows involved, and he says they both died, and the owner says they both died when they were rented, and the guy says, look, one of them died when it was rented, the other one died when it was borrowed. Sorry, they both died when they were borrowed. So in other words, you owe me for both cows, and he says I only owe you for one cow. So there's a Moedim Mektas. And now he's going to have to take the shvua, because even though he's denying part of the money that he owes, and therefore he would have to take a shvua on it.
Would this have been all avoided if they had a star? Did he borrow the money?
No, it doesn't help, because the star only sets the terms beforehand. This could be talking exactly if there's a star. The problem is that the cow died, and all we have is their say so as to whether the cow died when it was rented or whether it was borrowed. So,
do we only have a star on with monetary things? I mean, would you have a star if you were borrowing someone's cow or something like that, or, on objects, or just on money?
You could have a star on that. Absolutely, you could have a star on that, and it would probably be recommended. Just like you have a star when you take a car rental. There's a contract there. These are the terms of the contract. and that sets the terms of liability, etc. So that would be a highly recommended thing to do. The problem is, of course, if there's a dispute as to whether or not the cow he's liable for the damages. So, for example, let's say, I mean, nowadays car contracts include insurance. It doesn't matter if you have an accident in a rental car, chas v'shalom, then they normally don't distinguish between whether it's your fault or not your fault, because then you've got all these legal whatevers. They just say your insurance is going to cover you whether it's your fault or not. But if there was a clause in the thing that if you're at fault for the accident, then you're going to have to pay, then they're going to have arguments about that, and that would be similar to our case over here. It's not my fault that the cow died. I'm not liable for this cow. It was whatever. And the other one says, no, you are. Okay. So then the last case in our Mishnah is Zeomer Eni Yoder, Zeomer Eni Yoder, Yachloku. Interesting. This case where the cow died, and both of them are saying, listen, I don't know whether it died when it was rented or borrowed, and both of them say, so they come to Beis Din to say, look, advise us, what must we do? Because we don't know whether the cow was rented or borrowed. And the Mishnah over here says, let them split it. Who says let them split it in the case of a Safek? Somchus. Somchus is the one who always says, if you don't know, if you're not sure which way to split it, which way the money goes, then you must split it. And that's not the halacha. The halacha is hamotzi mechaver alav haray. If you want to take money from somebody, you've got to prove it. So this again, so then the renter is pater, and the owner has to take the loss. Okay. Mishnah Gimel, Hashoel es apara. Once again, he borrows the cow. V'shilcha biyad beno, and he sent, and now, so the mashil sends it to the borrower. So the owner says, okay, they make the agreement, and the next morning the owner says, okay, he says to his son, take my cow to Shimon. He's borrowing my cow. Biad Abdo, or he tells his Eved, or Biad Shlucho, or any other shaliach, or Biad Beno, Biad Abdo, Biad Shlucho Shel Hashoel, or he calls over the borrower's son, or the borrower's slave, or other shaliach of the borrower, and en route to the borrower, the animal dies. Patur. Why is it patur? Because the borrower never took possession of it. Said it never reached me. And in the case of even if you send it through the borrower's son or the borrower's slave, the borrower can say, I never authorized them to take this cow from me. I never received it. Okay, so it's an interesting question now, because it says biyad shluch or shel hashoel, because the shaliach of the shoel would have to have been appointed. So that leaves us with a question over here: how could you include this in the Mishnah? Because if it was the shluch or shel shoel, then yado ki yad shlucho. So therefore it should have already arrived in his domain. So Kahati points out over here that in the matter of the shlucha shel shoel, you have to explain bigon shelo asao hashoel shaliach b'knei edim. He didn't make him a shaliach in front of witnesses, but if he had made him a shaliach in front of witnesses, of course, once he hands it over to the shaliach, he's chayav. Okay. But it's a little bit schwer because he's called a shaliach, so it's odd that the Mishnah uses this as a case. However, Amar lo hashoel, but if the borrower said to him, Shalacha li biyad bani biyad abdi biyad shluchi, or biyad banach avdach biyad shluchach, if he says, send it to me with your son, with whoever else, then effectively what he's done is he's turned them into his shaliach. Once he says you can give it to me through your son or whatever, effectively he's made his son the shaliach. Or she'amar lo hamashil, or the lender said to him, Hareini mashalecha lach biyad bani biyad avdi biyad shluchi, or biyad banach biyad shluchach. I'm sending it to you through one of these messengers. But amar lo hashoel shalach. Yeah, that's fine, no problem. You can do that. So he's masking to the shlichus. V'shilcha b'meisa, and now he sends it, and en route to the shoel, it dies. He's chayav. Okay, so as soon as he's masking to the person who's going to lead the car to him, then effectively it's entered his domain as soon as it leaves the owner's domain. Okay, and exactly the same calculus works in terms of returning the cow. If he just sends it back through a shaliach, that was not there, where there was no haskama by the owner, then it remains in his domain until it reaches the owner. If, however, he gets a shaliach of the owner, or the owner agrees that yeah, you can send it with your son or whatever, and he's masking to it, then as soon as it leaves the hand of the borrower, it's now in the domain of the owner. Okay. Hey, Zion.
A price for produce may not be fixed until the market price is known. When the market price is known, a price may be fixed. And although this one does not have someone else, I'm sorry, although this one does not have, someone else does have. If he was the first of the reapers, he may fix a price with him on the stack of grain, the vat of grapes, or on the vat of olives, or the clay balls of a potter or a lime after it's been sunk into the kiln. He may fix a price on manure all the days of the year. Reb Yossi says the price may not be fixed on manure unless he had manure in the dung heap, and the Kekumen, however, permit this. He may fix a price with him at the best rate. Reb Yehuda says, although he did not stipulate with him at the best rate, he may say, give me at such and such a price, or give me my money. I don't know why they repeated this sentence here in the beginning. It says a price for produce may not be fixed until the market price is known. And then it says when the market price is known, a price may be fixed.
Yes.
I don't know why it was necessary to repeat that.
Well, because of the second phrase there, because even though the two parties don't actually have the produce, they can stipulate the price even though they don't have the produce in hand. So that's the chiddush over there.
All right.
Not just the converse of the first sentence.
Okay. That's right. I lost my place. Okay. A person. We finished it. We didn't finish it though. No, I did. Okay. The person may lend his share crop as wheat for sowing, but not for eating. For Rabbi Gamil would lend his share crop as wheat for sowing, and if he lent them at a high price and it became cheap, or if he lent them at a cheap price and it became expensive, he would take from them at the cheap price, not because the law is so, but because he wished to be stringent with himself. A person may not say to another, lend me a core of wheat and I will pay you at a threshing time. But he may say to him, lend me until my son comes or until I find the key. Hillel, however, prohibits it. And so Hillel used to say, a woman may not lend another a loaf until she assesses its price, for perhaps wheat will become expensive, and if they will come to a transgression of interest. Okay. One more? I don't think so.
Vavakama Vav base.
Right. Yeah, okay. If he leaves it in the sun, or gives it over to a deaf, mute, a mentally deranged person, or a minor, it goes out and damages. He is liable. If he gives it over to a shepherd, the shepherd assumes the responsibility in his stead. If it falls into a garden and derives benefit, its owner pays for what is benefited. Should it go down in the usual manner and damage, he pays for what is damaged. How does it pay for wheat, what is damaged? We appraise how much a saw's space in the field was worth and how much it is worth. Reb Shimon says if he eats ripe fruit, he pays for ripe fruit. And if a saw of two, if two saws, two saws. If one makes stacks of grain in another field without permission and the animal belonging to the owner of the field eats them, he's exempt. If it is injured by them, the owner of the stack is liable. And should he make the stacks with permission, the owner of the field is liable. If one causes a fire through a deaf mute, a mentally deranged person, or a minor, he is exempt by the laws of man, but liable by the laws of heaven. If he causes it through one of sound mind, the one of sound mind is liable. If one brings the fire and one brings the wood, the one who brings the wood is liable. If one brings the wood and one brings the fire, the one who brings the fire is liable. If another one comes along and fans it, the one who fans it is liable. Should the wind fan it, all are exempt. If one sets a fire and it consumes wood, stones, or earth, he is liable. As it is said, if a fire goes forth and comes across thorns and a stack of grain or standing grain or a field is consumed, the one who ignited the fire shall surely pay. If it crosses a fence 4 cubits high, or a public road or a river, he is exempt. If one ignites a fire within his own property, how far can the fire cross? If Elazar ben Azariah says, we view it as though it were in the middle of a coarse space of land. And Reb Eliezer says 6 cubits, like a public highway. Reb Akiva says 50 cubits. And Reb Shimon says, the one who ignited the fire shall pay. All is according to the fire.
Okay.
Nazir. Okay, we have this Nazir. Someone who said, I am a Nazir, shaves his head on the 31st day. But if he shaved on the 30th day, he has discharged his obligation. If he said, I am a Nazir for 30 days, if he shaved on the 30th day, he has not discharged his obligation. Someone who declared 2 items of Nazir shaves for the first on day 1. I'm sorry, shaves for the first on day 31 and for the second on day 61. But if he shaved for the first one on day 30, he shaves for the second on day 60, and he shaved on day of 60 minus 1, he has discharged his obligation. And this testimony was attested by Rabbi Papias about someone who declared 2 terms as Nazirist, that he shaved for the first day on day 30, he shaves for the second on day 60. But if he shaved on 60 minus 1, he has discharged his obligation because day 30 is reckoned for him in account of the second term. Someone who said, I am a Nazir, if he became tummy on day 30, he forfeits it all. But Eliezer says he forfeits only 7. And if he said, I am a Nazir 30 days, and if he became tummy on the day 30, he forfeits all.
Okay. Sachim.
Okay. Good base. They pour for him the first cup. Rabbi Shammai says he recites the benediction over the day, and then he recites the benediction over the wine. Beis Hillel says he recites the benediction over the wine and then recites the benediction over the day. Then they bring it before him. He who eats dipped lettuce before he reaches the course that is secondary to the matzah. Now they brought before him matzah, lettuce, and karosis, and two cooked dishes. Although karosis is not a mitzvah, but Eliezer ben Tzadok says the dipping is a mitzvah. And the temple they would bring before him the body of the Pesach offering. They pour him a second cup of wine, and here the son asks of his father, and if the son has not enough understanding, his father instructs him to ask, why is this night different from all the nights? On all the nights we eat chametz and matzah, but on this night only matzah. And on all nights we eat other greens, but on this night only bitter herbs. On all nights we eat meat roasted, stewed, or cooked, but on this night only roasted. And on all nights we might eat dipped vegetables once, but on this night twice. And according to the intelligence of the son, his father instructs him. He begins with the disgrace and concludes with the glory, and he expounds from the Aramean sought to disgrace my father until he eats the whole portion.
Okay.
Sounds like we're getting ready for Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If someone measured a cistern, whether along its depth or along its width, it is included in the law of water as place. These are the words of Reb Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva says, along its depth, it is included in the law of water as place, but along its width, it is not included in the law of water as place. If one stretched out his hand, his foot, or a reed into a cistern or to ascertain whether it contains water, it is not included in the law of water as place. To ascertain how much water it contains, it is included in the law of water as place. If he threw a rock into the cistern to ascertain whether it contains water, the water that splashes is not included in the law of water as place, and that which is on the stone is tahor. If someone beats on a hide and it was outside the water, it is included in the law of water as place, and if it was inside the water, it is not included in the law of if water is placed. Rabbi Yossi says even if it was made inside the water, it is included in the law of water as place. And since his intention is that it should merge together with the dirt.
Wait,
water,
that's 3.
And we have Arakan.
Okay.
If the Yovel arrived and it was not redeemed, the Kohanim enter and pay its worth. These are the words of Reb Yehuda. Reb Shimon says they enter but do not pay. And Reb Eliezer says they neither enter nor pay. Rather, it is known as an abandoned field until the second Yovel. The second Yovel arrives and it was still not redeemed. it is known as twice abandoned field until the third Yovel. The Kohanim never enter until another person redeems it. If one buys a field from his father, if his father died and then consecrated it, it is like an ancestral field. If he consecrated it and then his father died, it is like an acquired field. Those are the words of Rameir. Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Shimon, however, say it is like an ancestral field, as it is said, but if it is the field of his acquisition, which is not the field of the ancestral holding, it must be a field that does not stand to become the field of his ancestral holding, and that excludes this field, which stands to become the field of his ancestral holding. An acquired field does not go out to the Kohanim at Yovel, because a person cannot consecrate something that's not his. Kohanim and Levium, they always consecrate and may always redeem both before Yovel and after Yovel. One who consecrates his field at a time when the Yovel is not enforced, they say to him, "You bid first," but he only gives a fifth, whereas any other person does not give a fifth. There was a story of a person who consecrated his field because of its poor quality. They said to him, "You bid first," and he said, "It is mine for an Isser." Rabbi Yossi says this one said nothing other than for an egg, for consecrated properly may be redeemed with money or with something worth money. He said to him, "It is yours," and thus it was found to have lost an Isser, and his field was still his.
Okay. Zehor.
Right. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Have a great
wonderful
day.
week.
What are you doing